The dark web. It's a place most of us hear about but never dare to explore. A hidden part of the internet, cloaked in secrecy and danger, where curiosity can lead to terrifying consequences. In this video, I'll share 4 gripping stories from the darkest corners of the web. It begins with a strange email, a cryptic invitation to play a game that turns deadly. Then, a haunting encounter with a voice that knows far too much, revealing secrets no one else should know. From a mysterious buyer in an abandoned hotel room to a deadly countdown hidden in lines of code, each story dives deeper into the unknown. These aren't just tales of technology gone wrong, they're stories about the real danger of the dark web, the people behind the screens. Are you ready to hear what happens when curiosity takes you too far? You may think twice before ever logging on again. Story: the encrypted invitation. I wasn't supposed to see it. An email buried deep in my spam folder containing a cryptic invite to the dark web. The subject line simply read, "Play if you dare." At first glance, it looked like one of those junk emails you get from shady senders, the kind of message you delete without a second thought. But something about it made me pause. Maybe it was the odd formatting, the strange symbols in the sender's address, or the eerie simplicity of the subject line. Whatever it was, I didn't delete it. Instead, I opened it. The message itself wasn't much better. Enter the game, solve the puzzles, win $50,000. Your link awaits. A link was embedded below the text, a long string of characters that I immediately recognized as something only accessible through Tor. The deep web. Now, I'm not a tech genius or anything, but I've heard enough stories about the dark web to know it's not a place you visit for fun. People say it's full of hackers, illegal trade, and some really messed up stuff. Still, $50,000 was tempting, and curiosity has always been my weakness. Against my better judgment, I downloaded the Tor browser, masked my IP address, and clicked the link. The page that loaded was stark and unsettling. White text on a solid black background. Welcome to the playground. Solve the riddle below to begin. The riddle wasn't hard. It was the kind you'd find in a kid's trivia book. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 3 in the evening? Easy. I typed my answer. A human. The page refreshed instantly. Proceed to puzzle 1. And just like that, I was in. At first, the puzzles were simple enough. Word games, anagrams, basic riddles. They felt harmless, even fun, and the idea of a $50,000 prize at the end made it impossible to stop. Every time I solved a puzzle, I felt a surge of excitement as the next level unlocked. But then things started to shift. The puzzles got harder, and the tone of the game became darker. One puzzle showed me a grainy photograph of a street corner and asked me to name the location. I reverse searched the image, only to find out it was tied to a recent crime scene. The next puzzle was even worse. It presented me with a series of timestamps and asked me to arrange them in chronological order. When I completed it, the screen displayed a timeline of events leading up to a murder I'd seen on the news. That's when I started to realize this wasn't just a game. These weren't random puzzles, they were connected to real crimes. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was an elaborate alternate reality game, ARG. Or maybe the creators had insider knowledge. But the further I went, the harder it became to convince myself that this was just for fun. By the time I reached puzzle 8, my excitement had turned into a sick, gnawing dread. The challenge was a video clip. The footage was low quality and shaky, but I recognized the setting. It was a diner I'd been to with friends about a year ago. The timestamp on the video was from 2 days earlier. The clip showed a man sitting alone at the counter. His face was obscured, but he was holding something in his lap, a glint of metal that looked like a knife. Beneath the video was a question. What happens next? I froze. What kind of question was that? After a long pause, I typed, "He leaves." The screen flashed red. Incorrect. Watch again. My hands shook as I replayed the video. This time I noticed the man's movements, slow, deliberate. He wasn't eating or drinking. He was waiting. I typed, "He stabs someone." The screen turned black. Then, in bold white letters, "Correct. Proceed to puzzle 9." I didn't want to continue, but at that point, fear was driving me. What would happen if I stopped? Would they come after me? Had I already done something wrong by playing this far? Puzzle 9 was the hardest yet. It was a string of numbers and letters that I had to decrypt to reveal an address. It took me hours, but when I finally cracked it, my heart stopped. The address wasn't random. It was in my neighborhood. The screen refreshed, and this time it wasn't another riddle or video. It was a live feed. My breath caught in my throat as I realized what I was looking at. My own living room. The camera angle was from outside, peeking through a crack in the blinds. Beneath the feed, a timer started counting down from 10 minutes. A message appeared. Final puzzle. What is the safe move? I bolted out of my chair, frantically looking around for the camera. I checked the windows, the vents, the corners of the room, but I couldn't find anything. I sat back down and typed, "Leave." The screen flashed red again. Incorrect. I felt like I was going to throw up. The timer was down to 3 minutes and I was out of ideas. Then the screen went black and the feed disappeared. I waited, heart pounding, for something to happen. But nothing did. That night I packed a bag and left. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, and I've never been back to that house. A few weeks later, I saw a news report about a murder that happened near my old address. The victim's name and location matched the details from the puzzles I had solved. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a game. Whoever was behind it had been using me, my answers, to plan their crimes. I don't know who sent that email or why they picked me, but I've learned my lesson. If you ever see an invitation to play on the dark web, do yourself a favor. Don't. Tori 2. The voice on the other side. It started with a bet, a dumb, spur-of-the-moment challenge between me and my friends. We wanted to see who could last the longest on the dark web without chickening out. It was supposed to be harmless, just a way to prove who was the toughest in the group, but I was the one who heard the voice, and it knew everything about me. There were 4 of us. Me, Mason, Sarah, and Taylor. We'd gathered in Mason's basement for what we thought would be a fun, slightly edgy Saturday night. Someone brought up the idea of exploring the dark web, and it spiraled from there. We were young, bored, and stupid enough to think it was a good idea. The rules were simple. Each of us would get a laptop and a VPN, and we'd dive into the dark web through the Tor browser Mason had already set up. The goal was to explore as much as we could, stay out of illegal stuff, and see who could last the longest without freaking out. The winner would get bragging rights and maybe a free pizza if we were feeling generous. We started slow. Most of the sites we found were boring. Old message boards, broken marketplaces, random conspiracy theories. Mason found a forum about survival gear and laughed at the people debating the best gas masks. Taylor tried to find creepy videos, but most of the links were dead. Sarah seemed uneasy from the start, and honestly, so was I, but I wasn't about to let it show. Then Mason found the oracle. "Check this out," he said, spinning his laptop around so we could all see. The site was bare bones, just a black screen with white text that read, "Ask the oracle. Get your answers." "What is it?" Taylor asked, leaning in. "Some kind of chatbot, I think," Mason replied. "You ask it questions and it gives you answers. Probably just a gimmick." "Bet it doesn't work," I said, trying to sound unimpressed. "Only one way to find out," Mason grinned. He clicked on the link, and a simple chat window appeared with a message. "Welcome to the Oracle. Ask your question." "Okay," Mason said, typing. "What's my name?" The screen stayed blank for a second before responding. "Hello, Mason." "Lucky guess," he said with a shrug, though he looked a little uneasy. "Let me try," I said, pulling my laptop closer. I wasn't going to be outdone. The chat window loaded, and I typed, "What's my name?" "Hello, Nathan," it responded immediately. My stomach tightened. "It probably pulled that from my IP or something," I said, though I was using a VPN. "Yeah, maybe," Sarah said, but her voice sounded doubtful. "Try something else," Mason suggested. I typed again, "What's my middle name?" The answer appeared almost instantly, "Michael." The room got quiet. There was no way it should have known that. I hadn't entered any personal information, and my VPN was active. "Okay, that's creepy," Sarah said, moving away from her laptop. "Let me try one more," I said, unable to let it go. "What street did I grow up on?" "Maple Lane," it answered. Now I was really freaked out. I tried to laugh it off, but my hands were shaking. "It's just a program," I said. "It's probably pulling public data somehow." "Dude, we're on the dark web. There's no way it should have access to that stuff," Taylor said. I didn't reply. Instead, I typed again. "How do you know all this?" The response was chilling. "You told me." "What does that even mean?" Mason asked, leaning closer. "I didn't tell it anything," I snapped. The screen refreshed with a new message. "Would you like to know more?" "Say yes." I hesitated. My friends were all watching, waiting to see what I'd do. Against my better judgment, I typed, "Yes." The screen changed again, and a new message appeared. "Follow these instructions carefully. Do not disobey." At first, the instructions were harmless, almost random. It told me to visit a specific website and download a file. Then I had to upload that file to a different server. I didn't think much of it. It felt like a scavenger hunt. But as the night went on, the tasks started to feel off. One of the instructions told me to send an anonymous email to an address that didn't make sense. Another asked me to copy a string of code from a website and paste it into a private forum. "What are you even doing?" Sarah asked, her voice tense. "I don't know," I admitted. "But if I don't follow the instructions, I feel like something bad might happen." "That's insane. You should stop," she said, looking genuinely scared. But I couldn't stop. The oracle had gotten into my head. Every time I finished a task, it sent a new message, each one more personal than the last. "You didn't sleep well last night." "Your mom called you this afternoon. You didn't answer." "Stop looking over your shoulder. There's no one there." That last message made me freeze. I had been looking over my shoulder, convinced I'd heard something behind me. "How does it know that?" I whispered. The final task came just after 3 a.m. "Upload the file to this server." It provided a link. "What's in the file?" I typed, desperate for some kind of explanation. "Do as you're told," it replied. I clicked on the file out of curiosity, but it was encrypted. I had no way of knowing what it contained. My friends were practically begging me to stop, but I felt trapped, like quitting would somehow make things worse. I uploaded the file. Less than 5 minutes later, Mason's phone buzzed. He checked it and turned pale. "There's been an explosion downtown," he said, his voice shaky. "It's all over the news." I grabbed my phone and pulled up the headlines. A bombing had occurred just minutes ago, and the time of the explosion matched exactly when I'd uploaded the file. "No," I whispered. "This can't be real." I turned back to my laptop and typed furiously, "What did you make me do?" The response was chilling. "You've played your part." The screen went black. I shut down my laptop and unplugged it as if that would somehow make it all go away. But it didn't. The next morning I got a text from an unknown number. "Thank you, Nathan. We'll be in touch." I blocked the number, changed my phone, and even moved to a new apartment. But some nights I still feel like I'm being watched. If you ever find yourself on the dark web and come across something that knows too much about you, don't engage, don't ask questions, and for the love of God, don't follow its instructions. Story 3. The buyer's room. The listing seemed innocent enough, an old record player I found at a flea market. It was dusty, sure, but it still worked, and the vintage design gave it some charm. I thought it might fetch a good price, so I put it up for sale on a dark web marketplace. Selling there wasn't anything new for me. I don't deal in anything illegal. I just use the platform to flip rare or unusual items for collectors who pay more than anyone on eBay ever would. The buyers are usually discreet, and the transactions are simple. Ship the item to a PO box, get paid, and move on. But this time was different. The buyer didn't haggle or ask questions. Instead, they sent me a single message. "I'll take it. Meet me at the Crescent Hotel, room 42, midnight." I stared at the screen for a moment. Meeting in person was unusual, almost unheard of in these transactions. But money's money, and I figured maybe they didn't want to risk shipping it. Besides, the Crescent Hotel wasn't far. I wish I'd never gone. At 11:45 p.m., I parked a block away from the hotel. It was one of those buildings that looked like it belonged in a ghost story, tall, dark, and abandoned for years. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, and an eerie silence surrounded it. I grabbed the record player, wrapped it in an old blanket, and made my way inside. The door creaked open, and I stepped into the lobby. The air smelled like dust and mildew, and my footsteps echoed unnaturally loud on the cracked tile floor. A faint draft whispered through the space, carrying with it a sense of unease I couldn't shake. The room numbers were barely visible under years of grime, but I found the staircase and climbed to the second floor. That's when I saw it. Room 42. The door was slightly open, light spilling into the dim hallway. I knocked softly. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. Cautiously, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was bigger than I expected, but it was bare. Just a table in the center with a few folding chairs around it. The walls were peeling, and the only light came from a flickering bulb hanging overhead. I wasn't alone. 4 or 5 other people sat around the table, each with an object in front of them. A cracked porcelain doll, an old typewriter, a tarnished pocket watch. No one looked at me or said a word. This is room 42, right?" I asked, my voice sounding too loud in the silence. One person nodded slightly, but no one else moved. The atmosphere was suffocating, like the air itself was heavy with tension. I set the record player down on the table and sat in one of the chairs, unsure of what to do next. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. One by one, the others began to leave. Each person picked up their item and walked to a door at the far end of the room, disappearing into the darkness beyond. I waited, thinking someone would come back for me or the record player, but no one did. Finally, I stood and decided to follow the others. The door led to a long, dimly lit hallway. The air was colder here, and the faint smell of mildew was stronger. At the end of the corridor was another door, slightly ajar. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The room beyond was like something out of a nightmare. It was arranged like a museum exhibit. The items from the cellars were displayed on pedestals, each illuminated by a harsh spotlight. My record player was there too, already set up on its own pedestal. But it wasn't the items that stopped me in my tracks. It was the photographs. Each item had a photo next to it, showing a different murder victim. The images were graphic and horrifying, the kind you'd see on a true crime documentary. Blood-stained clothes, lifeless bodies, eyes frozen in terror. I felt sick as I realized what this was. These weren't just antiques or collectibles, they were trophies. The room suddenly felt colder, and I swear I heard faint whispers, like voices just out of reach. I spun around, but the door I'd come through was gone. panic set in as I fumbled around, trying to find a way out. The whispers grew louder, circling me, though I still couldn't make out what they were saying. The lights flickered, and for a brief moment I thought I saw shadows moving in the corners of the room. Then, everything went dark. When the lights came back on, the pedestals were empty. The items, the photos, everything was gone. The door was open again, and I didn't waste any time running out. I sprinted down the hallway, through the lobby, and into the night, not stopping until I was locked inside my car. For days, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I tried to tell myself it was my imagination, that the whole experience had just been some weird prank. But a week later, I saw a news report that made my blood run cold. A man had been found murdered in his home, and the details were eerily similar to the photos I'd seen in that room. The report mentioned a strange detail. The man's body had been found near an old record player. It was mine. I don't know what happened that night or who the buyers really were. All I know is that I've never used the dark web since. If you ever think about selling something there, don't. You never know where your item might end up or who might be waiting for you in room 42. Audience interaction. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have delivered the item or walked away? Story 4. Dead code. I thought I was helping. It was supposed to be a simple job, debugging a website that wasn't working right. I've taken on gigs like this before, even on the dark web. They're quick, anonymous, and pay well. But this time, as I went through the code, I found something I wasn't supposed to see, a countdown. I'm a freelance programmer. Most of the work I do is above board, but once in a while, I'll take on a sketchy job if the money's good. It's not something I'm proud of, but bills are bills. This particular job came out of nowhere. I got an email late at night from someone I didn't know. The message was brief. Website malfunction. Need debugging. Will pay 3 BTC, 3 Bitcoin. At the time, that was nearly $100,000. I stared at the email, half convinced it was a scam. But the client attached a link to the site and login credentials, along with a promise that payment would be sent up front. Sure enough, within minutes of replying, I had the money in my wallet. That should have been the first red flag. Nobody pays that much without asking questions. The site was strange from the moment I loaded it. It had a plain black background, white text, and a few links that didn't seem to go anywhere. It looked like a half-finished forum or a placeholder page. I logged in with the credentials and started digging through the code. The bugs were easy enough to find. Broken links, missing images, basic stuff. I figured I'd be done in a few hours. But as I worked, I noticed something odd. There was a script buried in the code that didn't seem to belong. It was encrypted, which is unusual for a website like this. Out of curiosity, I decrypted it. That's when I found the countdown. It was a live timer, ticking down from just over 24 hours. The script was tied to a streaming function that wasn't currently active. Whatever it wasn't set to start until the timer hit 0. Okay, that's weird, I muttered to myself. At first, I thought it was some kind of promotional stunt or a test run for a live event. But the more I looked at the code, the more unsettling it became. The script wasn't just for streaming, it had commands for controlling cameras and sending automated messages. It was a control panel. I should have stopped there. I should have closed my laptop and walked away, but instead I kept digging. The deeper I went, the more I realized this wasn't a normal website. It was a platform for something called the game. The code referenced players and outcomes, but it was vague about what that actually meant. I tried to access the stream directly, but it wouldn't load. All I could see were logs from previous events, and they were disturbing. The logs described rounds where participants were eliminated based on audience votes. It wasn't a game. It was a live-streamed execution. I panicked and tried to report what I'd found. I thought I could do it anonymously, but before I could, I got a message from the client. Do not alter or delete anything. Finish the job. My heart sank. They were watching me. I typed back, this isn't debugging. This is something else. I'm not doing this. The reply came instantly. Finish the job or we release your info. Attached to the message were screenshots of my personal details, my name, address, phone number, even pictures of my family. I froze. For the next few hours, I worked under their watchful eye, patching up the site as instructed. The whole time the countdown loomed at the corner of my screen, a constant reminder of what I was enabling. I tried to think of a way out. I couldn't let the site go live, but I also couldn't risk angering whoever was behind this. Then I got an idea. I wrote a small virus and hid it in the code. It was designed to corrupt the entire site and take it offline. If I timed it right, I could shut everything down before the stream started. The countdown reached 1 hour and the stream came online. I clicked on the feed, dreading what I'd see. The video was grainy, but clear enough to make out a man tied to a chair in a dark room. His head was slumped forward, and he wasn't moving. A chat box appeared below the feed. Viewers were already typing comments and voting on what should happen next. I felt sick. This wasn't just some dark web urban legend. It was real. I activated the virus. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the feed froze. The chat box disappeared, and one by one, the site's functions started shutting down. I let out a shaky breath. It worked. But before I could celebrate, my screen flickered, and a new message appeared. Nice try. We've relocated. Then, to my horror, my personal information appeared on the screen. My name, my photo, everything. The final message read, "This is your creator." I shut off my laptop and destroyed the hard drive, but it didn't matter. A few days later, I saw a news article about a new website hosting live-streamed games. The platform was identical to the one I'd worked on, but this time, it was worse. My name was attached to it. The headlines called me the mastermind. They accused me of building the system and running the games. People started sending me threats, and my life fell apart overnight. Now, I live in hiding, constantly looking over my shoulder. I don't know who these people are or how far their reach goes, but I know one thing: they've marked me, and there's no way out. If you ever get an offer to work on a dark web project, don't take it. No amount of money is worth what they'll make you do, or who they'll make you become.